Welcome everyone to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about Loki Season 1, Episode 6. It's called For All Time, Always. So full spoilers for the episode. It is the season finale, and we did get a confirmation that there is going to be a Season 2, and what might be the laziest mid-credit sequence I have ever seen, if you can even call it that. But it made me laugh because so much about the mid-credit scenes, the post-credit scenes that the MCU have is about teasing something to come. It's about teasing another movie coming, or now we're teasing more shows. And in this case, we're just, announcing there's a second season. But it's really funny to me that literally all it is a stamp that says Loki will return in season 2. Because it's like cutting out the creativity. It's cutting out the... How do we tease season 2? How do we tell them there's going to be a season 2? We'll literally just say it in text. We'll just say Loki's coming for season 2. Which, ultimately the message is kind of the same, but there's no... Just say it. Imagine if you got to the end of Iron Man 1, and instead of having a scene where Nick Fury shows up for the first time to say... there's more superheroes, and they're building to something. Everyone knows it's going to be the Avengers and whatever. Imagine if instead of that scene, it was just like a computer Word doc, and someone just typed into it, and you just saw the letters appear on screen. Iron Man will be joined by other superheroes and more movies coming soon. And then that was it. That's basically the equivalent of what this was. So, very interesting final episode. I kind of stand by something that I've said about these Disney Plus Marvel shows, and I feel that this is again true here. Not that there wasn't a way to have this be a TV show and to have all these ideas play out, because I did feel some of them were very rushed in episode 4 particularly, the way it kind of switched up. But I still get the overall feeling that this was clearly more of a 2-hour movie that was turned into a 6-episode show. I felt that way about Falcon and Winter Soldier. WandaVision less so, because it had the gimmick with the TV stuff. But I definitely kind of felt like, this could have just been the last, 25 minutes of the movie. The Loki movie, or instead of a show. And the funny thing is that I probably have more positive things to say about this episode. There's still a lot of things that it doesn't fix. There's still a lot of things that I think are overall problems with the show in terms of its pacing, its structure, in terms of just how unengaging some of the character interaction has been. Loki and Sylvie eventually fighting at one point in this episode was probably the most boring thing about the whole episode, was them actually dueling with each other. And the Renslayer, Gugu Mbatha's Ross character, her relationship, her friendship with Owen Wilson's character Mobius, and they're kind of like, we have been friends for eons and you betrayed me. I cannot give less of a shit about this friendship that they apparently have. We keep being told they have this long friendship, and I feel like all we got to show it was one conversation where she was, don't get a stain on my coffee table. And then she looked at that stain in this episode and thought, oh, my dear friend, Owen Wilson, how did I betray such a man? That was weak sauce. That was extremely weak sauce. The reason why I'm a bit more positive on this episode or basically is one thing, and that one thing is Jonathan Majors from Lovecraft Country, who was already announced to be playing Kang the Conqueror, or at the very least heavily teased to be Kang the Conqueror in an upcoming movie. Now, I don't actually remember which movie it was he was announced for. It would make sense given this, and something they've said about Loki being in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, and given what this movie or this show kind of sets up multiverse-wise, that he's probably going to be in Doctor Strange. I don't think I remember them being announced for... I think I remember them being announced for another movie. But that may just be my misremember. I probably should have just Googled it before I started. Maybe I'll Google it in a minute. But regardless, it doesn't really matter. The point is we knew he was coming to one of the movies, and it was almost like they made a point of announcing that and making it very simple and public, because it made him more of a surprise in this if you didn't know he was coming. I'm sure it probably leaked at some point, and I've just happily avoided it. I had such a grin on my face when the elevator opened and it was him, because I loved him in Lovecraft Country. I think he's a phenomenal actor. And this role is very different from that character. The character of Tick on Lovecraft Country was a very um a very subdued character who was dealing with an inner rage and dealing with regret and guilt and struggling in a world, and it was a very different character. This character is very theatrical. He's full of he's full of energy, all the rest of it, and I thought Majors was just captivating like almost every second he was on screen in this episode. He made this character immediately interesting. Even though he does just kind of tell the story of like his backstory, and admittedly, not really knowing much about Kang from the comics, I don't really know. And they never say that name. He teases the word Conqueror, but they never say the name Kang. And I don't know if technically he is Kang per se, because obviously we're dealing with this character who, in the 31st century, he's going to break down the walls of the multiverse, and he's going to meet another version of himself, and then so on and so on, and there's going to be tons of them. And eventually some of them are going to be quite evil and mean and try and go to war. I don't know if technically they're all Kangs, or if it's just the one who's the most ruthless, who is going to try and conquer everything, who is Kang the Conqueror. I don't actually know that, so I don't know if this guy here is technically Kang himself, or the Kang, the specific Kang who we're going to come to really know as the villain Kang the Conqueror. I don't know that, but regardless, if he is, if he isn't, if they're all Kangs, if he's not Kang specifically, it's another one who's a Kang, and he's just another minor Kang. I don't know. Like I keep wanting to say Krang. I keep wanting to say Krang from Turtles, but he's very captivating. I thought the idea of his character and him telling the story was interesting, even though it was very much just him dumping a lot of exposition. This was an example, though, of just letting him go to town, though. I think his performance is so good that I was just kind of interested in everything he was telling me. But that's kind of most of the episode. Most of the episode is just him telling them this stuff. There's a little bit with the clock, with the Tara Strong clock, trying to convince them to just like accept a timeline where they can both exist together. Sylvie does kiss Loki before she kicks him back into the TVA, which is at the end where she finally does choose to kill Kang, because, and I keep calling him Kang because that's technically who he's going to be if he's not technically him yet. Now this doesn't fix anything. This doesn't fix the problems I've had with the show. It doesn't fix that I think that visually the show is kind of uninteresting at times. The direction of this episode, especially, probably because a lot of the sets were, extended by CG, if not mostly CG. Obviously, they had a room for them to sit in while they were having this conversation, and I don't mean visuals from an art direction point of view. I'm not talking about the colors. I'm not talking about the design of the world they're in. I'm talking about the direction, the more technical side of things. Everything feels very flat. Everything feels very simplistic in TV. I never got a sense of any sort of interest in the visuals. To me, it just, a lot of it just looks very green screened. A lot of it just looks like we're standing on a really simple set. Yeah, there's a lot of thought was put into the color of what the walls are and the design on them, but it otherwise feels like a very empty kind of space. I don't know. It feels a little bit bland in that sense, and I hate to keep using the word bland because I feel like I'm using the word bland a lot when it comes to Marvel stuff, but a lot of it is kind of bland, and I think it's a shame because there's potential in some of these ideas. So this doesn't fix anything, but it does mean that my experience of watching this episode was at least more enjoyable, I think, than the last three, because I just enjoyed this character. And what's so funny about it is that a lot of what built up to this episode feels like it's not that important in the grand scheme of things now. I mean, obviously we're supposed to care about Loki and Sylvie's relationship and her choice to do this and go against Loki, even he doesn't want to do it. But ultimately, it just kind of I like the Jonathan Majors character here. I like his performance here. It doesn't make me like anything that built up to it beforehand anymore. I don't really feel any more invested in the journey we went on with these characters, especially episodes 3, 4, and 5. Those are the ones that I particularly was varying levels of not liking. It all felt a little bit just kind of MacGuffin-y, until we get to the real point of the show, which is to set up this multiverse stuff. The idea that now there is going to be a multiverse, and that because there's a multiverse, all of these Kangs, if they're all called Kang, maybe it's just the one that's called Kang, but regardless, all of these guys are going to be at war, and sure enough, Loki goes back to the TVA. He tries to talk to Owen Wilson, who seems to have unlocked the truth for a lot of people. They're all variants. We see B-15 or whatever. I always forget the number, but we see her kind of convince one of the TVA soldiers that Renslayer was a person before. She's not just the person in charge. She used to be a human on Earth. In fairly modern times, it was 2018, so that may be something. And she leaves on a bit of a cliffhanger. She just kind of leaves after a really kind of dull scene with Owen Wilson. There's not really much to say about that. She says she's going to go and do something. I can't remember what she said. I don't know what the line of dialogue was. But yeah, Loki goes to speak to Owen Wilson, and Owen Wilson's like, "Who are you? What are you talking about?" So reality has been rewritten in the face of what's happened. And Loki, maybe Sylvie too, but Loki seems to be one, be the one who remembers what time was like before. So he's in a very new timeline. There's a giant statue of Kang, or not Kang, possibly Kang. And again, when I say not Kang, I just mean that I don't know if every single version of Kang is called Kang, or if that's just one specific variant of him. That's all I mean by that. But yeah, the statue sets up new timeline, and we get our lazy mid-credit sequence being like, "Hey, season 2 is happening." And they also confirmed that Loki's going to be in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, which makes sense given that this basically gives birth to the new multiverse, because it's all unleashed, because Sylvie kills he at the end of everything, or whatever. He's credited as He Who Remains. That's what he's credited as. He Who Remains is what Jonathan Majors is actually credited as. But there you go. It's frustrating. It's a frustrating show, because I think a lot of it just feels like just really simple plot destinations and plot goals that don't really feel that they're earned or built up in any meaningful way, just so we have goals for each episode. And then finally, the whole point of the show, which is to set up this multiverse stuff and set up this villain for future projects. Luckily, I do think the scenes with him are mostly pretty good, and I think he's very captivating, which actually makes me more interested in all the things that he's going to be involved with going forward in the MCU. And I hope it's not just one movie. I hope he's a recurring thing for a little bit. I think that would be pleasing to me, because I do find him so engrossing as an actor. I found him, like, he added so much to these scenes with his monologuing, with the way he was interacting with them. There was ways he changed demeanor, like mid-sentence, so the way he would kind of... Again, it's very different from the other performance I've seen of him, so I really like that part of it, but pretty much everything else, don't care about the friendship with Owen Wilson and Gugu Mbatha Raw. I thought the culmination of Loki and Sylvie and their drama, yes, they kiss, but I didn't really care that much when they kissed. The idea of Loki falling for himself, the idea of them falling for each other being what causes a weird branch in the timeline, I like that concept, but I've not really felt much between them. I don't think the relationship's been built on more than just them spouting exposition to each other. And to be fair, not to be hypocritical, Kang just does kind of spout exposition, but he is treated as the man behind the curtain. He is treated as this person at the end who's going to explain a bunch of stuff, and at the very least he is very captivating while he's doing it, just because the performance is so good. So I really like him. That's clear. I've been gushing over his performance the whole video, but I really have not much else that I like about this last episode. So looking forward to more him. Not particularly looking forward to season 2. I mean, at least season 2 of Loki is going to be different, and we can't even say for sure what season 2 of Loki can be at this point, because we have to assume that Multiverse of Madness, Doctor Strange 2, we have to assume that is going to then alter what the status quo is getting into season 2 of Loki, right? Because presumably that's going to have some effect on what the multiverse says, some effect. I mean, the obvious thing you would say right now is that Loki is going to try and, again, like, work with Owen Wilson to try and break free from the hold of Kang and whatever else is happening. But ultimately, isn't that kind of the same thing again? Where he's trying to break Owen Wilson free, of the lie, and like convince him of the truth that we did this already, and that he's actually a conqueror, and we have to stop him. I mean, it's not the exact same lie, but the idea that everyone at the TVA is working under this ruler, and they have to sort of learn the truth. It might feel very samey, and given that I didn't think it was that captivating this first time round, I'm not particularly excited by the prospect of doing it a second time. So hopefully, Doctor Strange 2 alters that a bit. It probably will. I suspect it will. I can't imagine we're going to get to the end of Doctor Strange 2, and that will still probably be the premise for Loki season 2. But at the same time, it would be kind of weird also to feel like you're setting that up at the end of this season and then have a movie completely change it. But then we're in kind of uncharted territory with how these affect each other, because it is such a relatively new thing still, this shared universe, especially now we're adding in the TV things. That said, though, these Disney Plus shows feel like stretched out movies split over 6 parts. Again, not counting WandaVision, which is a little bit different, but both this and Falcon and Winter Soldier feel like a movie that was stretched out over 6 episodes, and as a result, I think some of the flaws, there would have still been flaws in the movie, don't get me wrong, I don't think that you hand wave away the problems that are in these, but I do think the problems would be less severe because they're not stretched out as over much time. I do think that certain things that I really didn't like about this show, particularly episode 3, I think episode 3 would be heavily reduced because it wouldn't be having to fill a whole episode in the context of a movie. Falcon and Winter Soldier, I felt that way. Like episodes 3 and 4, largely all the Madripoor stuff. Like I felt like that would have been condensed down significantly, and I wouldn't have been so painfully like bored by it. The villain would have still sucked in that, don't get me wrong, but that might have been less of a major concern. At least because I wouldn't have to spend as much time with her. So that's the thing. And you know, Black Widow just came out, and the villain sucked in that too. So I mean, this is just kind of par for the course right now with the MCU, unfortunately. But yeah. So I really like Jonathan Majors as Kang / not quite Kang, but technically Kang, whatever the exact naming convention is here. But regardless, I still think this show was extremely. I think the direction left a lot to be desired in places. I think the script was poorly constructed and paced for 6 episodes. And ultimately, I kind of felt like they were making up extra obstacles just to justify the journey to get to the end. And what's funny is that some of the elements felt kind of rushed, particularly around episode 4, when they were actually making the pivot into, the timekeepers are liars, and there's someone controlling all this, there's someone behind all this. A lot of that felt rushed to me. I felt that could have resonated more. So, I have to say, overall, I think this is extremely mediocre. At best, overall. Even though, you know, I felt there was promise in the first couple of episodes. There's some fun ideas there, and I really like Jonathan Majors. So I'm excited for him going forward, but that's basically it. So I guess I'll see for whatever's next. I don't know what is next. Is Hawkeye next? Maybe Hawkeye. Maybe there's a bit of a gap. I think What If's coming, but I don't know if I'm going to talk about that. But in terms of the live action stuff, I don't know. I think, yeah, maybe it is Hawkeye that's next. Maybe it's a little while. Well, next show, we may actually have the next movie first. Yeah, I think, yeah, because Shang-Chi's out in August, I think. So, or September. August, September. But hey, there you go. That's my thoughts on the Loki finale. Your mileage may vary. So there you go. Thank you very much for joining me. This has been a pleasure. Kind of. Let me know what you thought in the comments below of Loki Season 1. You can like, subscribe. Helps out a lot on YouTube if you do that. You can also check out our Patreon, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. For as little as $1 per month, you can support all the content and keep it all coming. But otherwise, that is me. So thank you once again for watching and listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?